Welcome to the Creators Podcast. I'm Jonathan Hamill, a doctor and writer based in Paris. My guest today is Abraham BENRUBI. Abraham is an actor who's been active in the entertainment industry since the 1990s. He is widely recognized for his roles as Larry Kubiak on the show Parker Lewis Can Lose and Jerry Markovic on ER. Abraham has an extensive resume. He's been part of many of the most beloved TV shows of the last 30 years, and he's also had a long movie career. He's also very active in the world of voice acting, most notably for his work on the World of Warcraft video games. You can find him on Instagram at Jambon Deluxe Luxury Ham. Abraham, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hamill. It makes me
Thank you.
laugh every time somebody says luxury ham.
Yeah, I have to ask where that comes from, being French.
My name is Abraham, and when I was a very young kid, my mother and I moved into an apartment complex, and there was a young girl on the playground who asked me my name, and she couldn't pronounce it, so she just called me Ham, or Hammerhead. And so I've kind of been called Ham all my life, and Fancy Ham was my DJ name for a minute.
Okay, it's all coming clear.
There you go.
All right, so I wanted to start in another weird place, maybe, but so your full name is Abraham Ruben Hercules BENRUBI. Where did the Hercules come from?
My dad is Greek. He was born in Thessaloniki, and he and my grandparents and the family came to the States after World War II. And as my father got older and old enough to have a kid, he decided he wanted all of his children to have a Greek mythological character in their name. And in our family, it was also a tradition to include. It actually skipped generations. My father's Asher, his father was Reuben, his father was Asher, etc. So I got Reuben from that. So Abraham Ruben Hercules BENRUBI. I don't know the full mindset behind that choice, but here it is.
Well, it suits you well. So you grew up in Indianapolis, and so you're talking about your father, Asher, who has always been part of the entertainment industry. I understand he was involved in radio and rock bands.
Yeah, my parents were really young when they had me. So my dad was 21, and he was in college. And they had a really popular rock and roll cover band. They did, Aerosmith songs and early 70s rock stuff. And that led to him getting a gig as the late night radio guy on a station in Indianapolis called WNAP. And he got so popular that they made him the morning guy. And in America, at least, the morning guy on the radio is sort of the king of it all. And so he got pretty famous locally from that. So it was interesting because I sort of grew up being the kid of a famous person, but only on a local level. But I'd be walking through our neighborhood and dudes would roll by in their El Camino and yell at me, "Hey, you're Smash's kid."
Oh, really?
Yeah, my dad went by Adam Smasher. That was his his pen name, if you will.
So you were Hammer and he was Smasher.
Yeah, exactly.
So do you think that led to having, I guess, a different kind of childhood of, let's say, children whose fathers were doctors or lawyers or not in the entertainment industry that give you like a glimpse into that industry and make you want to be part of it?
It's funny, maybe subliminally, certainly not consciously. What my father did in terms of show business, I would say, was very, very provincial. It was a local thing, right? He wasn't. I didn't really think about it in that way. I can say that the difference between the kids who were raised by doctors and lawyers is they lived in really nice houses. And, even to this day, most musicians and radio people, for that matter, are not very wealthy.
Yeah, that's true. So how did you get interested in acting? Was it in high school, middle school? Was it
Uh,
later in life? You
in in fourth grade, I started at Indianapolis Public Schools, School 80, and they asked my mom if I was a daydreamer, and so I wasn't doing very well in school, and they asked my mom if she thought I would want to be in the Christmas play to play Santa Claus, and I did that, which was fine. I don't have really any memory of it, but then a woman who was in the audience ran a program for kids at our local theater, which was held at the art museum. And so I started going to these Saturday morning kids acting classes and started doing plays there at the Indianapolis Civic Theater. And that's how I got started. And then I wound up going to a high school with a performing arts program, and a film from our public broadcasting system, PBS, here in the States, came looking for actors to be in like an anti-drug propaganda miniseries for PBS. Not propaganda, but an anti-drug miniseries.
yeah.
And so I got a part in that as like the bad guy's henchman, which you'll see a pattern developing here. So we did that, and it was super fun. I don't think anybody ever saw it. It's out there somewhere. It's called Private Victories. When you conquer your addiction demons, it's a private victory.
I'm sure we can find it.
Yeah, good luck. All français. And then a film from Hollywood came to Indianapolis to shoot at one of our swimming facilities. We had an Olympic diving facility, natatorium. And so they cast some locals, and I got a chance to audition for that, and I got that part, and they wrote me into sort of the rest of the movie as the bad guy's henchman again. That movie is called Diving In, and you can blame everybody involved in that movie for making me go down this dark road of show business.
So how old were you when that happened?
I was 19. So I moved to Los Angeles. I had done that the summer maybe the summer I was 18. No, it must have been the summer I was 19, and then moved to Los Angeles that September.
So you just decided that was what you wanted to do when you moved to Los Angeles?
It never even occurred to me that it was possible. I think, especially at that time, in Indiana, we were not encouraged to do anything but sort of follow in our parents' footsteps or, stay local. But all of the actors and the director of that film, Diving In, really encouraged me to come to Los Angeles. And I went out there for 2 weeks with the money I'd made from that movie. It went out here. I'm here now. And I wound up getting an agent, and everybody encouraged me to move out there. So here I am.
Oh. Who was the main
answer? Sorry.
No, who was the main person who encouraged you, and what did they say that convinced you to do that?
That's I don't know if I needed much convincing. I was ready to get out of Indiana.
All right.
I would say that the director of that film, an Australian fellow named Strath Hamilton, I'm not sure what became of him, but he was a great proponent of mine. And then one of the other actors, a fellow named Kerry Scott, who you can still see him working from time to time. He's on the HBO series Winning Time, which is about the LA Lakers history right now. Those two guys were really the ones who encouraged me. And the star of that film was a kid named Matt Adler, and he had been in a surfing movie. And so he was a little bit of a movie star when he showed up. And I got to know him, and he and his wife at that time also encouraged me to move to LA and pursue it. And he'll come back into the story later.
Okay. So now you're in LA, and how long was it before Parker Lewis? Did that come relatively quickly?
So I moved to LA in '89, and the pilot for Parker Lewis would have been I moved in September of '89. Parker Lewis pilot would have been March of '90. So it's about 6 months.
Wow.
And it took about 6 weeks. I think there were 5 or 6 auditions. Um, and it was all new to me. At that time I had there wasn't as much like behind the scenes stuff as we have now, right? So I didn't really know
Mm,
what I was doing. But I had fun acting, and I knew how to do that part of it, and I was lucky to get that role, and it turned into such a great experience for me. It was really my university years, if you will. I learned
yeah.
as much as you can learn about filmmaking at that time on that set.
Yeah. And just to stay on the casting part, do you remember any of the other actors? Did you get to meet other actors who were up for the part?
It's
Maybe that's
funny.
too far.
No, I don't necessarily remember any specific actors that you would recognize the names of, but for a very long time there was a sort of a small group of the over 6 foot big guy actors that I would see at every audition, no matter what it was. Um, and that included like John C. Riley and Earl W. Brown and MC Gainey. All these guys went on to do a lot of really great work, and so there was the big guy.
The Big Eye Club.
Yeah, exactly right.
So speaking of all those, it was 3 years on the Parker Lewis. What are I guess you can't really tell me everything that you've learned because you were just starting out. But what did you end up most using in the later years that you learned going to set every day?
Um, I think the most useful and important stuff I learned on Parker Lewis was how the camera how the camera is used and why certain lenses and certain shots are used to convey what set of information.
Mm.
Um, the art of storytelling with a motion picture camera, I suppose, is really the great lesson of those years. And also just kind of how to deal with show business people.
Are they very different from normal people?
I don't know that they're very different from normal people, but I have to deal with them a lot more often. So yes, yes.
Okay.
No, there's a weird thing that people who pursue show business, there's a weird fragility. There's a weird ego and arrogance sometimes. They say, what's the great adage? Life imitates art, and art imitates life, right? So
Mm.
yeah.
So the show was super modern, influenced later a lot of later shows. And considering your role specifically of Larry Kubiak, wasn't didn't have a lot of lines, but people really remember you, and probably all around the world, right? When because you have a recognizable face, but still that role really stuck in the mind of a lot of people. My friend who's next door was like, I want to say hello to Kubiak.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, you will.
it's funny.
What do you think? Yeah, what do you think brought that on?
Um, well, for one, I think everybody in life grows up with their big buddy, right? At least for males, for men. When I was in high school, I was the big buddy to a couple of different little guys, and now even as an older man, I have a couple of shorter fellows in my life. There's always a big guy and a little guy. There's a lot of funny cartoons, the early Merry Melodies and Looney Tunes. There's always the big bulldog and the little chihuahua. And the little chihuahua is always picking fights and starting trouble, and then the big bulldog always has to get him out. So I think that's what people recognized in Kubiak. And there was also a thing of the bully being, everybody's got their bully, whether it's somebody who's actually physically intimidating or emotionally abusive or intellectually intimidating. We all have someone who scares us in that way. So you're talking about archetypal characters, and Kubiak fits into, it's like as simple as David and Goliath. Parker Lewis
Yeah.
needed his Goliath.
All right. So moving on, we have to talk about ER, another amazing show. Um, Again, I'm curious about the casting process. You were done filming Parker Lewis, I suppose, at that time. How did you get that audition? Was it just one of many auditions?
So, let's see. ER is 1994. We started, and at that point, I had auditioned for China Beach, which was another John Wells produced show. I'd auditioned for them 5 or 6 times and never gotten the part, but
Mm,
they remembered me. And when it came time to cast the pilot of ER, it was a 2 hour movie, and the casting director, John Levy, had something like 250 different roles to fill. And after he sort of went through all the bigger parts, some of the smaller parts, they just made offers to people that they wanted to have as part of the project. I'll just put it that way. And I was lucky enough to get that as an offer. I don't remember how many days I worked on the first pilot, but maybe 10 or something like that, 10 out of
mm,
20. Um, but it was a lot of, uh, so that's literally maybe the only thing I've ever been offered in my whole career. somehow, somehow I got lucky with that one thing. Um, Usually you have to audition, but on that one in particular, I think I had been in to see them enough that they knew
yeah.
what I was capable of.
Mm. And so, what do you remember of those first days? Did you were among many actors who were not well known at the time, obviously are very well known now. Did you sense that there was something special about the show in the early days, or was it just a job and you know?
Uh, no, it was definitely special. Anthony Edwards obviously had already had some success. Most of those regular guys had already had something that put them in the
Mm,
position to be the stars of ER.
yeah.
Um, but I do remember it was sort of a unanimous feeling, cast and crew, that we were doing something different because at the time, television had gotten very formulaic in terms of what you were capable of doing with the camera. You'd have a wide master shot, you'd have a two shot, you'd have an over shoulder close up,
Mm,
over the shoulder close up, right? Very simple blocking for the most part. There are exceptions, of course. But ER really broke that. And we tried, the camera became another character in the show, which was
mm,
unique and really felt unique at the beginning for sure.
mm. So you could feel that even while shooting, maybe because the
Oh, yeah.
scenes were longer, it wasn't cut all the time.
Correct.
Uh,
Exactly right.
yeah.
And there was more of a rehearsal process. Like, in order to get all that blocking correct, it took a lot more rehearsal than you would normally do for a television show at that point.
Right. And is
Choreography.
that normal? 20 days for the first for the pilot?
Because they had shot it as a movie of the week, which at the
Mm,
time would have been like a television movie, a 2 hour movie. I don't know if they 100% knew that it was going to be a series when they shot the pilot or not. But Michael Crichton had written this amazing script about his time as a medical student in Chicago, and I think it was just the right timing, the right the right intellectual and creative approach to making the show, and the right team of people. It's just one of those things, a lightning in the bottle. I hate to be so cliche with all my adages and idioms, but it,
No, it
that
was
won't happen again.
almost yeah, it was almost an instant hit, right? It went
Yeah.
pretty big, yeah,
Yeah,
pretty fast.
it was number one by the fourth episode. So that's
Wow.
like, and then at that time, that's like 30 million people watching with no
Yeah, not only
DVR, no streaming. Just
that's true.
you had to be home at 10 p.m. on Thursday if you wanted to watch ER.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. I remember watching it. I was in med school at the time, watching it, dubbed in French, and
yeah,
you know, it inspired a whole bunch of medical students to, wear the stethoscope around the neck and all that,
yeah. Well,
among
and
other things.
that came back full circle in a way, as I know a couple of the doctors on the show worked for Médecins Sans Frontières, and a couple
Hmm.
of characters wound up going to work for them as well, Doctors Without Borders.
Really
Yeah,
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. There were a lot of doctors obviously working on the show, giving ideas and everything. Were they also helping with regards to the words, all the medical jargon?
Oh yes. Every week the main cast got a cassette tape with all of the pronunciations of all the medical jargon they had to do, and I remember Noah Wiley kept them all. I bet he still has them. Yeah, that's funny.
So you ended up being in 137 episodes. Is that correct?
That
So
sounds like a lot. Yes, that's too
that's
many
yeah. It sounds.
hours.
So can you just walk us through maybe a usual day on set? I mean, granted you didn't have one of the main roles, but I guess you were still present a lot of the time.
Yeah, and a big part of what made ER feel so realistic is that when the doctors passed through that central area where most of my stuff took place, Jerry's there or Frank is there, and those characters stay
Mm,
consistent, and the geography stays consistent, and it really it really immerses you into the sense of place of the show. So a typical day would start 6 a.m. for the actors. There are a few, makeup and hair and assistant directors are there 5:12 a.m.
mm,
Uh, they stick us in the makeup trailer to get pretty and put shit in our hair. Not mine personally, but some people. And then we would usually go and do a rehearsal of whatever the first scene was going to be, and that could either be something really short, depending on what it was, or something that would take hours and hours. And while we rehearsed, all the team members watch, the camera crew watches, and props and wardrobe and all that, and so everybody gets on the same page. They send us back to get our costumes on or our wardrobe on. We come back and shoot it, and we just keep doing that
yeah,
until 12 hours go by, and then they pull the plug, and we do it again the next
yeah,
day.
amazing.
Yeah.
So the show, as we were saying, became very big, and some of your fellow actors also became huge stars. Mainly George Clooney, I guess, in particular. Uh, at that time, how did you see all this media frenzy? Were you happy not to be in the middle of it, to have it like a step back?
Um. Yes, I was happy to not be in the middle of it. Yes. It began my deep loathing of publicity. No, we actually there were 10 of us who were sort of the B team, nurses and me and nurses and me, and paramedics. And at one point, we had hired a group publicist, and we wound up doing some interviews and doing some red carpet stuff. And I just
Mm,
never, that is just not my jam, man.
yeah.
I don't do well until like I start sweating. Um, but it was amazing to watch Clooney, who wanted that, really be super smart about the publicity he did, the way he did it, what he talked about, what he didn't talk about. Um, and, he turned that into, I think the first movie after he got big was the Quentin Tarantino vampire flick.
Oh yeah,
So everybody was super excited for him. Um, and I think we all went and saw that together. I can't
from
remember the name
dusk
of that
till
movie.
dawn.
Yes, From Dusk Till Dawn. Thank you.
Yes,
Um, and then the next movie was Batman. And it's like, what? You're playing
really.
Batman? Will you come see the Batmobile? It was super cool. At
So
that
you all
point,
visited the set.
yeah, I mean, at that point, I had, I had definitely worked with some movie stars and met some movie stars, but I had never seen anybody get the leading role in a movie like that, and it was
Mm,
super cool. And I'll tell you, at that time, if anyone deserved that kind of stardom, it was him. George Clooney is one of the smartest, kindest, most compassionate and intelligent people I've ever met in any
mm,
walk of life. So I great pride in my brief time associating with him. And also, if any of your viewers want to buy his house on Lake Como, it's 107 million. Available now.
Well, all right. You heard it here. You can leave messages if you're interested. All right.
Exactly. Contact me directly. We'll take a
Yes.
finder's fee.
Um, so when people think, I mean, obviously a lot of people out there want to be famous. With TikTok, Instagram, everything, it's become easier to be famous for, many things. Now that you've been around many famous people, actors, and others, I guess you must have kind of a grasp on celebrity. What do you think people get wrong when they think of becoming famous or being a celebrity?
What do people get wrong? First of all, not every celebrity is rich. That's the first thing to know. Just
Mm-hmm.
because you're famous doesn't mean you're rich. Um, the companies that own the sources of information that you learn about celebrities have a vested interest in keeping celebrities at the top of your mind.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say that. But they're just humans. At the end of the day, even Steven Spielberg has to poop. Um, you understand that, Doctor, right? Uh,
Exactly. I see that every day.
maybe there's maybe Margot Robbie doesn't poop anymore, but for the most part, we're all still human. And I think that if you remember that as you watch, not only will that allow you to appreciate what they're doing even more so than you might, because some actors really have to go through some emotional things that most people would not want to go through. Um, so sometimes people earn their celebrity through hard work, and sometimes people become celebrities through dumb luck. I don't begrudge anyone. If you want to be famous, go for it, but you don't get any of the benefits of being famous if you don't first consider yourself a human being and treat everyone that way.
Mm, good. And now I have to invite Margot Robbie just to be sure.
Yes, please, and do ask her about the thing because people are worried.
All right. Um,
Pink. It's pink pellets, doctor.
yes.
Is there anything wrong with my
Rose.
pink pellets?
Okay, I'll keep that in mind. All right.
Sorry, you can
Anyway,
edit that out
so
immediately, right?
we'll see. So anyway, you left ER after a few seasons, and so I heard you on another podcast say that for the three next years, three following years, you only worked as an actor for a total of 8 days before returning from to the show. So was that by choice, or were you doing a lot of auditions, or just you wanted to take some time off?
Not by choice.
Not by choice.
I got really tired of doing ER. It was hard. It got hard. It got to be more hours. It's too hard to explain how it got hard. But the point being is, I had to step away from that for a minute. And then I just didn't work. I just didn't book stuff. I did a couple of really high profile jobs. I did a Coen Brothers movie, but I only did one day. Um, and like I said earlier, as an actor, you can't live on working 8 days in 3 years, no matter what your job is. I think maybe Elon Musk. Uh, but that's the actor's life. You can't expect to get the role. In fact, 99% of the time you don't. I couldn't even begin to tell you how many roles I've not gotten.
Mm.
Thousands. Yeah. So those 3 years were weird, and it was interesting. It was a little reset for me, and then as I sort of recollected myself, then I started working again, and I got to go to New Zealand and make a great movie called Without a Paddle with people that I'm still friends with. And
Mm.
it's a strange life, the actor's life.
Yeah. And did you ever think that you were done, or did you have like other jobs you wanted to pursue that you had in mind?
I've always thought I'm done. I think that's the curse of the artist, maybe the actor. The last thing I worked on, I feel like I probably won't be on camera ever again. It's always that way for me. Other jobs I've considered. I love music, and I dabble in audio engineering, so that's something that I have an interest in. If what's Brad Pitt's new studio there in France? If they need any interns or bouncers, I'm available. Miraval Studios. So that I would do. I have
Okay.
I like
All
cooking,
right.
and I don't know what I would do. Voiceover has kept me afloat in the acting world, thank goodness.
Mm.
And to be honest with you, it's way more fun to do voiceover than on camera. It's a
Oh,
little,
really?
oh yeah, it's a treat.
Oh, yeah. Well, we can talk about voiceover, yeah, because when did you start doing it? 'Cause you've done a ton, and you've done obviously World of Warcraft and many other things.
Yes. So, like I said, some of the people I met on that movie, Without a Paddle, one of them is Seth Green. I had known him through the audition circuit off and on for years, but we finally got to work together. And at that time, he and another friend, Matt Senrich, had created a show called Robot Chicken, which was a stop animation show where they made fun of pop culture and comic books and video games and stuff. And he showed us the 6 episodes they'd made in his garage in New Zealand. And we were filming in New Zealand, and I just fell in love with it. I thought it was really smart and funny and silly and dumb. And I was like, I want to do this. I want to be in your show. And so when we got back, they miraculously sold that show to Cartoon Network, and we've been doing Robot Chicken ever since. It's like 15 years
Oh,
or
it's
so.
still going. Wow,
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah. So that's how I got
Yeah,
started in voiceover. Sorry.
okay.
Finish your question. Then, through that show, Seth Green is another super smart guy. He parlayed that into meeting George Lucas and getting access to the entire world of Star Wars prior to
Oh,
the
wow.
Disney acquisition. And so we made another show called Star Wars Detours, which you can still find the trailer for on YouTube. It's very fun. And that was another show making fun of Star Wars. And when Disney bought Lucasfilm, they axed that, but it might come back around. That's something
Mm.
to look out for in the future. Now, through that, the recording engineer who worked with us on that was also doing the recording for World of Warcraft. And one day, one of their actors didn't show up, and they needed somebody. And so that fellow David Guerrera called me, and he said, "Hey, they need a deep voice actor. Can you be here in half an hour?" And I sped down there and started working with the World of Warcraft people, Blizzard, and a great voiceover director named Andrea Toyes. And I love doing that. There's nothing I'd rather do than make monster noises all day. It's so fun. So fun.
So there's a director for the voice actors who's directing. It's like, how does that work? Just you have the image, you have the text, and you just go until you have it.
Yes, that's pretty much right. In like a recording studio, I'll be in the booth with the microphone and the earphones, and I'll have the script and the image of the monster, and the director and the engineer will be at the operating desk, and you usually do 3 takes of a line. Like if my line is "I'm going to kill you," you'll do 3. You'll do "I'm going to kill you," "I'm going to kill you," "I'm going to kill you," and then they'll pick which one they like, and you can, if they want to push in more in that direction, you do 3 more and do 3 more, and then there's always the fun, when you get hit in a video game, there's the so some days I'll just do 6 hours of taking hits and giving hits. It's great fun.
That sounds fun.
Lots of fun.
Is that also how you got interested in sound engineering? Just by being in the
Uh,
booth?
I got interested in sound engineering because my punk rock days of playing guitar into a Tascam cassette 4-track. I've always had an interest in that. And that may come from my dad being a DJ, actually seeing him with all the
Mm.
dials and shit.
Yeah. Hmm. Okay, so you've also played in a lot of some of the most beloved TV shows of the last 30 years. When I saw the list, it's pretty amazing. There's goes back to Growing Pains, Blossom, Married with Children, Roseanne, The X-Files, Dark Angel, Buffy. So it's a long list. It goes on. Um, so I'm sure all these experiences were very, very different, obviously. But looking back, can you find any commonalities between the shows that made them what they are today? Was it the writing, just the acting, or just like happy luck?
In terms of me being a part of them, commonality, or just in
Uh,
general?
in in terms of like the content of the show and how it just became part of pop culture at the time.
Yeah, I mean, TV is so huge here. It's not as huge in Europe that I'm aware of, but
Mm.
there is no escaping television in America. You can barely go to the library without there being a television on somewhere. So, most of us have been exposed to countless hours of unnecessary pop culture. And it's always amazing to me to see what can become a hit. Like you mentioned Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and that's a show that probably shouldn't have been as interesting as it was, but because of the group of people involved in it and the way it didn't take itself so seriously, it resonated with people. And I, the idea of escapist fantasy, I think, is the appeal behind those kinds of
Mm.
shows. Star Trek, Star Wars
Yeah.
fits in that as well. If you have a boring day to day life of drudgery or working retail or something that you're not into, you can escape into those kinds of things. And I think that's
Yeah, for
why
sure.
those kinds of
Yeah.
shows are so popular.
Power of a good story,
Yeah,
basically.
power of a good story.
So you've also now you've told me that you prefer voice acting, but you've also been in a lot of movies. What are the different kinds of pleasures or challenges of being on a movie set compared to just being either one day or many years on a TV show?
Big difference is time. A movie usually is a much slower pace than a television show. An episode of ER we shot in 8 days, and a movie of the same length might be like 21 days.
Mm.
So it's also a movie is most films are more of a director's project where there is a distinct leader. A television show usually has more of a committee, a group of writers and producers who make decisions as opposed to just
Mm.
one guy. And the director is almost there to serve that committee. Um, Usually the material on television is more general, a little more generic, and films get a little weirder. I'm all for the weirder the better. One of my favorite filmmakers is Gaspar Noé. Noé.
Oh yeah, yeah,
So he gets the good weird ones, right?
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So I wanted also to talk about other kinds of arts. You mentioned music. How about literature? Are you a big reader? And are there any books like either related to acting or not at all that had a profound impact on you that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I'm a huge reader. I grew up reading fantasy and science fiction and crime fiction. I'm a giant Tolkien and Sherlock Holmes fan. Um, Probably reading is what really got me started acting, pretending to be Spider-Man or pretending to be Bilbo in my mom's basement. um, I don't know. I'm not going to be able to remember the title. I should have looked this up. There's a William Goldman book about show business that's well worth reading, but I can't really recommend any other show business books. um, I just finished the John Waters' new novel, Liar Mouth, which is excellent. I hope he gets to make a movie out of that. Um, I read the Yuval Noah Harari books this year,
Yep.
which are exceptional and really those will change the way you think about things.
Yeah, those are amazing.
Yeah. The Karlov Nosgard books are also, if you're a reader and you want to read something that you wouldn't think you'd like and it just captivates you entirely, those My Struggle books by Karl Ove Nosgard, exceptional.
Huh. It's Carlo.
Karl
With
Ove. Let me make sure I'm not messing it up. It would Pimpable.
Okay, there we go. Awesome.
Fantastic. Amazing. Slice of life stories, but I think the first one is sort of about the death of his father, his boyhood struggles with his brother and his father. Really interesting. Um, it's hard to watch movies because books are so much better. Sorry, I'm making noises. Um, no, I'm an avid reader, and I encourage everyone to read as much as you can. Local library.
Yes,
Your library is a wealth of information.
with TV shows,
You're
obviously
welcome. Yeah, you
at
can
the
leave the
library.
TV on if you need to. Yes, at the library. Hopefully, it's all educational.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Well, this has been great. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here. It's been super fun.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
So thank you everyone for listening. If you enjoyed this conversation, if you would like to hear more of this, you can find everything there is to know on my website. It's hamilljonathan.com. So thank you, everyone, and see you soon on the Creators Podcast.
Bye.
Bye bye.